Imagine reaching the pinnacle of all sorcery with your given crest at birth, only to willingly restart life and reincarnate, successfully acquiring the strongest crest out of the four, but at the cost of being placed in the distant future as a student. Following our MC Matthias Hildesheimer, we see him riding on a carriage towards the capital to take the entrance exam at age 12, but is warned by the driver that his crest is regarded as the weakest of the four. Out of nowhere, Matthias detects a monster approaching, warning the driver to pull over, but the driver brushes off Matthias's warning. Right on cue, a calamity-type beast appears, frightening the driver. But in an instant, Matthias dispatches the creature with an enhanced body and a sword. Having been dropped off at the capital, Matthias is amazed at the modern feel the city gives off compared to his homeland. But Matthias suddenly hears some shouting nearby. Entering a store, Matthias spots a girl, Alma Lapucius, begging for her friend's magic sword to be repaired, but the blacksmith says such a repair is not possible. Browsing the swords on display, Matthias is impressed by the build quality of the blades, disappointed that the enchantments are poorly applied. As Alma continues to beg the blacksmith for any alternatives, she says she's looked everywhere for a long sword that can be light enough to swing around with one hand. With the blacksmith turning down Alma's request once more, Matthias speaks up, offering to help out. The blacksmith asks Matthias to not show off, pointing out that Matthias's crest of failure will do him no good with enchantments. But Alma feels something strange from Matthias, choosing to purchase a sword for one magistone. As the two sit down, they formally introduce themselves, with Alma mentioning how she ran away from home to avoid being married off by her family. Alma chooses to call Matthias Maddie, revealing that the sword she needs is for her friend from her hometown, leaning in close only to fluster Matthias, seeing her so energetic. At that moment, Lurie Aventrad appears, dazzling Matthias as he stiffens up, but surprisingly Lurie also becomes flustered, laying eyes on Matthias. Breaking the tension, the blacksmith returns with a newly forged sword, borrowing a magistone only to begin his enchantment. Seeing as the sword needs to be light and sturdy, Matthias gets to work casting several spells on the sword, surprising everyone when they hear Matthias has finished in mere seconds without chanting anything. Skeptical, Lurie asks to test out the sword, but having accidentally glided the blade along their table, the gang noticed the blade had split the table into two. The blacksmith confirms that Matthias didn't use any trickery to swap out the swords, asking if Matthias wants to be an enchanter, but having refused the offer, we cut to the beginning of the entrance exam. Starting with the practical skills, the instructors state that the exam will consist of swordsmanship and casting, but following Matthias, we see him chatting with Lurie only to spot Alma sad she found the tactics portion of the exam hard. With Lurie tested first, she easily parries the examiner's blade, terrifying them when they see their sword had been severed, ultimately passing Lurie. Next up, Matthias is called, standing before the captain of the Knights, Guile, who states he'll pass Matthias if he wins their duel, having found out that Matthias was the one that enchanted Lurie's blade. With the duel starting, Matthias spots Guile enter a strange stance, insulted as Guile is looking down on him. Choosing to prove him otherwise, Matthias dashes towards Guile, swiftly casting a spell as he manages to parry Guile's lethal slash. With Guile impressed, Matthias and Guile exchange several more strikes, but as Matthias casts several more spells on his blade, Matthias ends up disarming Guile, forcing Guile to admit defeat. Moving on to the casting exam, Lurie is once again asked to go first, instructed to strike down 5 targets with a fire arrow. Taking a deep breath, Lurie activates her Crest of Glory, easily casting simultaneous fire arrows, but Matthias wonders why Lurie is using incanted casting. Matthias states that incanted casting has terrible conversions from input to output, plus casters are vulnerable when chanting. Matthias also notes that the Crest of Glory is highly compatible with incanted casting, whereas his Crest of Failure has limited range for spells. Next up, Matthias is asked to attack the same 5 targets, but asks if he could choose any spell as long as he destroys the target. Pitying Matthias's Crest of Failure, the examiner allows any spell, prompting Matthias to begin conjuring a devastating spell. Without a word uttered, Matthias manages to destroy the targets along with the training area, blowing everyone away. Officially passing, Matthias suits up for the opening ceremony, meeting up with Luri and Alma, only for Matthias to become speechless seeing Luri's outfit. As the opening ceremony starts, Headmaster Edward states he could care less about lineage or Crest strength like their rival sister academy, and instead states that at his academy, they evaluate students based on their skills. Having kept the speech short and sweet, Edward asks to speak with Matthias privately, freaking Matthias out as he fears he'll get expelled for destroying the school during his exam. Easing Matthias, Edward states he was impressed to learn about Matthias's feats during the entrance exam, curious as to how Matthias got so strong. Edward promises to not pry into Matthias's life, but in exchange asks for Matthias's help. Edward states that wordless casting is a lost style, revealing that Matthias himself may be the last ever person to have perfected such a technique. But when Matthias offers to teach others, Edward states that their rival sister academy is preventing such a thing. Apparently, the sister academy is known as the First Royal Academy, a school dictated by nobles, and due to their influence, Edward's Second Royal Academy must follow the First Academy's rules. Matthias wonders what's so special about First Academy, handed a book filled with research into incanted spells that the First Academy published, but Edward does mention that they can shed light on wordless casting if their school does well in the next inter-school competition. Edward personally asks Matthias to help educate his students, a request Matthias is happy to fulfill, immediately heading out as Matthias holds his first class on wordless casting. Giving a demonstration, Matthias enhances his body, leaping into the air only to blow away several targets. But this makes his fellow students accuse Matthias of being some sort of demon. Luckily, the teachers vouch for Matthias, showing off their own wordless cast combined with a sword, convincing the students to give it a go. Working into the evening, Matthias is happy to see Alma and Luri are slowly getting the hang of things, but notices Luri needs to take a break seeing as her mana is drained. Luri points out the other students are learning quickly, wondering why wordless casting had been lost for so long, something Matthias questions as well. Changing topics, Matthias asks Luri to place her hand out, choosing to share some of his magic with Luri, only to successfully teach all of his fellow students wordless casting in the coming days. With a month passing, we cut to the inter-school tournament where Luri gets nervous about magically chosen ones, students that always represent First Academy and have strong casting power. Alma adds that the previous captain of the Mage's Order was a chosen one, but out of nowhere Matthias detects an abnormal being with 10 times his magical power, a being Matthias knows to be a demon. With Matthias confirming that demons are still humanity's natural enemy, Matthias heads out onto the arena alone, immediately shunned for housing the Crest of failure. Matthias hears the 3 opposing students declare themselves to be housing Devielise, the chosen one. But at the same time, the headmaster of the First Academy proudly declares they'll be claiming their 65th win against the Second Academy. As Devielise mocks Matthias, Matthias easily sees through Devilice's disguise, detecting his demon body through a spell. As the 65th inter-school tournament begins, Lasis and Jayas rush Matthias, but in an instant Matthias blows the boys back, forcing Devielise to defend with a barrier. Annoyed, Devielise prepares a spell, but accidentally forgets to chant the spell, revealing his wordless casting. Seeing an opening, Matthias rushes forward with his blade, aiming for Devilice's head, but having leapt back, Devielise once again forgets to chant his spell. With Matthias and Devielise exchanging blows, Matthias confirms that demons have infiltrated First Academy long ago and was responsible for removing wordless casting along with marking the 4th Crest of Failure as the weakest crest. With Devielise failing to land a strike on Matthias, Matthias chooses to enchant his blade, cutting Devielise slightly, only to shatter the spell disguising him. With his demon features exposed, Edward calls for everyone to evacuate, but Devielise gets pissed. Having chosen to blast Matthias with a spell, Matthias easily deflects the spell, watching as Devielise prepares to take off, but having anticipated such a thing, Matthias blinks in close, cutting Devielise down. Having destroyed his blade, Matthias reveals that in his former life, he was the great sage Gaius and had dedicated his life to eradicate demons, but it seems the demons are making their comeback. As several guards rush to secure the demon's body, Luri hugs Matthias for being so brave, but Alma calls the two out for flirting so openly. Having heard of Matthias slaying a demon, the king summons Edouard and Matthias, asking Edouard to be more casual, seeing as they're old friends. The king states he wants to give Matthias some land, something Matthias doesn't want. But luckily the king wants to keep Matthias's achievements a secret, feeling embarrassed that a demon managed to infiltrate their country. As an alternative, the king offers to give Matthias a sword with double enchantments from a blacksmith. But Matthias knows he created the sword for the blacksmith, instead asking to be granted access to the dungeon's resources. Matthias knows that the resources found in a dungeon along with the monster drops will easily surpass any reward given to him, something the king immediately grants, only to ask for Matthias's opinion on the state of the kingdom. The king reveals that the 4 magical chosen ones guarding the kingdom have vanished, one of which is the last captain of the magic order, Erhard, but Matthias wonders if they are all demons. The king adds that magical chosen ones appeared several hundred years ago, the same time Matthias left the world to reincarnate, but the king wonders if Matthias unmasking a demon has scared all the others away. Sadly, Matthias states that the demons have fled to regather their forces for an all-out attack, something Matthias predicts will take 3 months, horrifying the king. Matthias starts off by suggesting a barrier is erected over the kingdom using a divine class artifact. Plus, if Second Academy works together, they can finish preparations in a month. With the king ordering to allow the teaching of wordless magic, the king puts his full trust in Matthias, giving him access to the kingdom's vault. Needing mithril and orichalcum magistones to create the barrier, Matthias looks around, spotting a strange sword only to recognize it as the blade he wielded in his previous life, choosing to claim along with a pendant he used in his previous life as well. As Matthias continues to train his peers, he tells Luri and Alma that he'll be heading into the dungeon to retrieve some resources, realizing that dungeon dives are always better with a party. Nervously, Matthias asks if the girls would like to join his party. Surprised the girls are down for anything, but Luri does point out that Alma's use of a blade is lacking compared to her bow skills. As a bonus lesson, Matthias takes out a bow, infusing his arrow with magic, only to decimate the target before him. Matthias states that Alma's Crest of Standard synergizes well with magical archery, advising that Alma play into her strengths and use a bow in the dungeon. Jealous, Luri asks if she can enchant things as well, excited to hear the hero Crest favors enchantments over actual combat, but gets embarrassed seeing she was overreacting a second ago. Seeing as his 4th Crest will act as the tank, Alma is the sniper and Luri's first Crest acts as a support. Our trio immediately head to the dungeon beneath the academy. Matthias explains that dungeons will have different monsters from floor to floor, running off to retrieve a weak monster, only to ask Alma to practice her magical archery on the monster. Infusing her arrow with magic, Alma decimates the little monster, only to be instructed to try a different magic spell. This time, Alma concentrates on the arrow she is releasing, surprised to see the arrow hunt down another monster. An attack Matthias utters a thread-guided enchantment. Matthias sets Alma the goal of hitting 2 targets at once with her arrows, sending Alma off as he reminds her to collect the magistones dropped from slaying monsters. Now alone, Luri gets excited to learn enchanting from Matthias, hearing that Matthias wants her to learn to create her own weapons first, so she can practice her enchantments on. Stopping near a wall, Matthias shatters the wall with a spell, showing off that the dungeon's wall is filled with metals they can extract. First off, Matthias instructs Luri to extract the iron and mithril from the stone they gathered, only for Matthias to teach Luri how to craft weapons and enchant them, seeing as she is a fast learner. Following Alma, she is able to take down 3 enemies with a single arrow, choosing to head back seeing that she's collected a lot of magistones. Surprisingly, Alma stumbles onto Luri testing out her newly enchanted swords, amazed that Luri's blades can tear holes in the dungeon walls. Seeing as they're ready, Matthias sets the goal of reaching the 10th floor, wanting to test out how much the girls have grown. Entering the 2nd floor, our trio are swarmed with several slug monsters, prompting Luri to blast them with a fire spell. When Luri's spell doesn't work, Alma simply skewers them with her tracking arrows. Both working together, Alma continues firing away at their enemies, all whilst Luri restocks Alma's arrows. Having purposely worn his pendant in the dungeon, Matthias reveals that the pendant equally shares the experience point gathered, but just then a killer dog appears. Seeing the dog disappear, Matthias wonders if he should help the girls out, but seeing Luri erect a firewall to stall the dog, Alma manages to land successive blows to pin down and slay the beast. Matthias is amazed at the girls' teamwork, suggesting that they set up camp to rest, only to infuse a Magistone with his mana to project a barrier for the girls. As for Matthias himself, he tells the girls he'll be heading to the deeper floors to gather some adamantite, curious as to how strong his new body is. When the girls hear that Matthias is heading to floor 25, they remind Matthias that even the 30-man party, under the protection of the mighty mage Gaius, only ever reached floor 33. Regardless, Matthias begins to descend, choosing to skip past the weaker monsters to conserve his magic, managing to stock up on some rock-infused adamantite. Before Matthias can leave, he detects the aura of the floor boss nearby, rushing towards the boss lair as he finally gets to have some fun. Encountering various monsters, Matthias easily wipes out the swarm, scanning the area only to suddenly dodge a projectile, laying eyes on an arc serpent. Seeing the creature dive towards him, Matthias has no choice but to evade, noting the serpent's venom as he must finish off the boss before the toxic fumes affect him. Getting pumped, Matthias watches the boss charge once more, choosing to cut off one of the serpent's scales, only to allow himself to get eaten. Inside the belly of the beast, Matthias unleashes an explosion spell to break free, following up by triple enchanting his blade only to run it along the exterior of the serpent. Seeing the serpent still standing, Matthias shatters a Magistone before the serpent's eyes, gathering the particles into his blade only to decapitate the monster with a single slash. As the dungeon quakes from Matthias's attack, we see two demons, Arias and Erhard, skeptical of who could have caused such a tremor. Returning to the girls, Matthias apologizes for scaring them, revealing that he had slain a massive monster only to unveil the head of the serpent he just slayed.